Those that are going to Children's Chapel can be dismissed. The following questions were given to some kids. These were their answers. Question. Explain one of the processes by which water can be made safe to drink. Answer. Fluoridation makes water safe to drink because it removes large pollutants like grit, sand, dead sheep, and canoeists. Question. What does varicose mean? Answer. Nearby. Question. What does the word benign mean? Answer. Benign is what you will be after you be ate. Question. What happens to a boy when he reaches puberty? Answer. He says goodbye to his boyhood and looks forward to his adultery. Question. How are the main parts of the body categorized? The body is consisted into three parts: the brainium, the borax, the abdominal cavity. The brainium contains the brain, the borax contains the heart and lungs, and the abdominal cavity contains the five bowels, A, E, I, O, and U. And the answers to the previous quiz questions, the answers said one thing, but they meant something else, or they should have been something else. And that's kind of the way it is in the book of Revelation. The writer wrote one thing, but it really means something else. And we'll talk some more about that a little later. Last year, after I preached a sermon, we were on the way home, and my kids asked me what I was going to preach about the next year. I guess they were looking so forward to it. And I said, I don't know. Someone of them said, why don't you preach about Revelation? I said, okay. And so that's partially why I'm here this morning. I'm really excited about preaching this sermon. I think the book of Revelation is one of the most misunderstood and misused books of the Bible. I've only heard one or two sermons from Revelation my whole life. And I don't know why that is. Maybe because it is so misunderstood and misused. And I've only heard one sermon from the whole book of Revelation. And that was actually a sermon that was over like 3 days. And we don't have 3 days this morning, so I'm just going to give you the Cliff's Notes version. Before we jump into the book of Revelation, I need to kind of paint the background a little bit. The book of Revelation was written around or near the end of the 1st century. And some think it was written during Nero's reign in 68 AD, and some think it was written during Domitian's reign around 95 AD. But either way, the book was written somewhere between the middle and the end of the 1st century AD. Now, when Revelation was written, the Christians were being persecuted by the Roman Empire. As an example, after Rome burned, Nero blamed the burning of Rome on the Christians. And he did that to take pressure off himself. And because of that, the Christians were persecuted. The Christian persecution probably reached a peak during the reign of Diocletian in about 300 AD. And it's reported that over 20,000 Christians were killed or martyred during Diocletian's reign. And during this time, the Christians were commanded to sacrifice to the Roman gods, and if they didn't, then they were immediately executed. Now, there are a number of interpretations of the book of Revelation, and I don't even have time to mention all of them, but one of them is a futurist one. It says that Revelation is predicting and prophesying what will happen into the world. And as we progress this morning, I'll give you some examples of why that interpretation kind of falls apart. And another common interpretation is that everything in Revelation is exactly as it says it is. And we'll talk some more about that as well. The interpretation that I'm going to talk about this morning is that the book of Revelation was primarily written to the people during the time period in which it was written, which was about 2,000 years ago. And the majority of the events that are in the book of Revelation have already happened, they're already taken place. I do believe that the book of Revelation is useful for study and particularly as an inspiration, since the theme is that God is powerful, God is control. As a result, God wins. Now the reason and the time frame for why the book of Revelation is written is given to us in Revelation 1:1. It says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants, which must soon take place. The book was written to Christians who were being persecuted or about to be persecuted by the Roman Empire. And it was written so they would know what was about to take place or happen. Now, if you look carefully in verse 1, it says, show his servants what must soon take place. The emphasis on soon. This time frame is also mentioned in Revelation 1:3. It says the time is near. You see the time, it says it's soon, it's near. This is not something that's happening far off in the future. The book was written by the Apostle John. We see this in Revelation 1:1, 1:4, also in 1:9. God's awesome power is illustrated throughout the whole book. Revelation 1:8 says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is, and who was, and who is to come, the Almighty. God says he is all-powerful. Now Revelation 1:9 tells us that John is on the Isle of Patmos because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. Now this slide shows where the island of Patmos is. It's kind of located between modern-day Greece and Turkey. Now the Romans used the island of Patmos as a place for exiles, or kind of like a prison. In Revelation 1:11, John is commanded by a voice to write what he sees and send it to the 7 churches. And it says that John turns to look and he sees someone that's like a son of man. Now, who else referred to himself in the Bible as a son of man? Jesus. Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man. An example would be in Matthew 9:6. It says, so you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. So Jesus is speaking to John here in Revelation. And in Revelation 1:12, it says, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe, reaching down to his feet, with a golden sash around his chest. His head and hair were like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining in all his brilliance. Notice that Revelation 1:12 mentions 7 golden lampstands, and Revelation 1:16 mentions 7 stars. And you can kind of see that in the slide here. I guess you didn't know John had a photographer with him. Well, as I mentioned earlier, a common interpretation of Revelation is that everything mentioned in the book is exactly as it's portrayed, but I believe this is not the case. I believe the book of Revelation is full of symbols, and these symbols mean something altogether different than how they're portrayed. The book says one thing with a symbol, but it really means something else. And we can see this in Revelation 1:20, because it tells us what the symbols of the 7 golden lampstands and the 7 stars are. And it says, the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. So in this case, Revelation gives us the symbol of the 7 stars and the 7 lampstands, and then it tells us what they really are. The 7 stars are not stars, but angels. The 7 lampstands are not 7 lampstands, but they're really 7 churches. In this case, Revelation tells us what the symbol and tells us what they are, but that's not the case in a lot of the places in Revelation. We kind of have to figure out what the symbols are from the context or from